Audacity better fucking work for this editing. Oh my. Okay. So we are here today. We're going to start talking about our birth stories. Between us, we have 4 children. For anybody listening, the reason that that's a little bit funny is because hopefully I've learned how to edit this, but Jesus Christ, Melissa.
Before we tried this already, and she thought that we had 3 children, but I have 3 children alone, and then she has 1.
My apologies to anybody who's listening if I sound a little goofy today. I am just not with it. I'm spacey today. That's the word for it. I'm spacey.
It's okay.
Like spacey.
Like
okay. So Crystal, you've had 3.
Turns out.
So one of the things, that I want to talk about, like the reason that we're discussing birth stories today is because we both have children, of course. And one of the things when I was getting ready to have Scarlett, I noticed that a lot of people would ask me like, oh, are you gonna take a epidural? Are you gonna take drugs? Are you gonna do it naturally? First of all, I have no fucking clue, and it's none of your damn business. Second of all, you don't get a choice a lot of the time.
Nope.
Right? So for me, I was researching, okay, what's the best way to have a kid? And then what do I want and everything? And it's so personal.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, I had all these people coming up and they would ask me these details, and there's not a lot of birth stories online for like podcasts. Right. You don't hear a lot of people like, or on the radio talking about, oh yeah, well, I went into the hospital and this is what was supposed to happen, but then, their heart rate dropped and they had to cut me open and take her out of me, something like that. Like you don't hear a lot of that or about the whys.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to talk about that today.
Okay.
Yeah. So how did you have your children?
Well, the first one was vaginal, just the good old fashioned way.
Push.
Yeah. And then the other 2, I had sections. So it was, both very, even both of the sections were actually very different circumstances. So, but I mean, I don't know. I think like with the first one, my oldest, Ethan, was like, I was 21.
You bounced back.
I did bounce back, but I had like a whole lot of hopes and dreams, and I was just like, I was all giving it all the gusto and thinking like, I'm just gonna like go in there. This is gonna be all natural. It's gonna be great. I don't need any drugs. Like, I'm gonna go in there and this is gonna be fine. I can totally do this. And I'm just gonna tell you, like, I am a tough motherfucker most of the time.
Mm-hmm. I can vouch for that.
But like realistically, I was in there and I got induced because he was measuring a little bit small, so I was at like 38 weeks.
Okay.
And so the doctors were like, well, we'll just get you induced and then you'll have a baby. Okay, best time. So I go in, I get induced. Yeah.
Blink of an eye.
So I mean, like, I don't really know what it's like to go into labor on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So even out of the 3 of them, I have no idea really.
Right.
But I went in, got the cream, got the whole swab, like the whole works, everything. They did everything. And then they put me on like the drip. And then it was basically like 22 and a half hours of just hard labor pains the entire time. So like I was at a point where I had been there for, I'd say, I think it was around like 12 or 14 hours somewhere. And then I was stuck at 4 centimeters.
Oh my God.
And I was stuck there 4 hours. And so like
painful.
It wasn't fun. And it was just like, my favorite part of my birth story with Ethan was just like, you probably didn't get the same kind of an experience, but it's like we give birth here in Newfoundland in a teaching hospital, just for some backstory. So, doctors, nurses, the whole shebang, everybody is learning, you got residents coming in everywhere. And like there was one point where they were checking my cervix and it was just like, they walk in and there's like a whole team of people
in your
and
vagina.
I'm just like looking And I'm like spread eagle, like just up in the stirrups kind of thing. And they're just like, we're just gonna check and see how far you're dilated. And so the obstetrician goes in and she's like, up to her wrist in there. Right. And she's just like, okay, so you're about 3 centimeters. She's like, would you mind if all of these students also check your cervix? And I'm just like, fuck no.
Been
Like,
there.
no,
Yeah.
absolutely not. There was literally 10 of them
Oh my God.
in the room just watching. I was like, no,
Like
that's not gonna happen.
one maybe. You know what I mean? Like bring a student in, be like, hey, this person's here. They're a doctor.
Yeah.
We're, let them do it. But like 10, yeah, line up, boys. Like,
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, no problem, whatever. I was
oh
just
my
like, no,
gosh.
bye. This is not bring a friend. Like,
Yeah.
sorry. Anyway, like
Yeah.
in the meantime, I'm sitting here going like, I'm trying to get something out of here, not put more in. Like,
Well, I mean, if all 10 hands help bring the baby out, then you have at her bring in 10 more.
right. But it didn't work that way.
No.
So I guess I was like stuck at those 4 centimeters for so many hours, and I had the gas, I had like the morphine shots, like I took everything except for the epidural. And finally, the nurses came in and just looked at me, and they looked at me and basically said, "Honey, if you don't get this epidural, you are going to be stuck here because you cannot relax long enough
Yeah.
to actually let this happen."
Mhm.
Right? And so I was like, fine, do whatever. Right. And so once they did that, I fell asleep. Next thing I knew, I was awake and it was like 9 centimeters. Just
Yeah.
like this, it was so quick, right?
Mhm.
And so then that was a good time. So I had my mom and my husband Jason was in with me. So I had like Jason was up on the left hand side of me and mom was up on the right hand side of me. And like I couldn't feel my legs. So it's not like I could like get in any other position except for laying on my back.
Yeah.
Right? Legitimately had the longest socks on. I had like knee socks on. That's what I remember, right? So
That's why
socks
everybody
on.
wanted to get up in there. You were like a little porn star.
Right.
Look at those knee highs.
Right. There's definitely a niche for that somewhere.
Oh my God. There's somebody with a weird fetish now who's like, oh yeah.
Right.
Tell me more about that delivery.
But like
Awful.
it was yeah, like I had these knee socks on trying to keep my legs warm. And I had Jason up on the left hand side of me and mom was on the right hand side of me, and they were like telling me to push and push, and all that I could think was, I cannot shit on the table in front of him. That's what I was thinking. I was like, I cannot shit on the table in front of Jason. He will die and I will die of
I have
embarrassment.
to throw out some backstory. So Crystal and I are both very opposite in our relationships when it comes to the openness of our bowel movements. So I will say, from knowing Crystal and Jason has a very, very weak stomach as it is, just for anything.
Oh yeah.
And they don't fart in front of each other.
No.
Like that part of the mystery or that part of the relationship remains a mystery. They're keeping the lust
21
alive.
years still going.
Yeah. So they,
Right?
they'll leave the room to go do that. My myself and my husband. Well, you know what? I don't even know if it's Drew's choice. It's just kind of like if you're going to be married to me, you're just going to hear about my poo. I'm going to fart in front of you. I want a high five if it's a good one. Like that's our relationship. So it's so funny that you're like, I just don't want to poo in front of him. And
Oh
I was
no.
like, leading up to our delivery, I was like, bitch, I'm going to poo on the table. Do you think I'm
Right?
going to poo on the table? What do you want to bet? Like we were taking bets on if I was going to shit or not.
Well, I mean, like realistically, when you think about it, just the logistics of everything, like I would say that there is like a 99.9% chance that everybody does it.
Oh yeah.
Totally normal.
The doctors
Just
lie. They'll be like, no, you didn't. It's perfect
yeah.
down here.
Yep. And they lied to me, I'm sure of it.
Oh, definitely.
They whisked that away so quickly, but I was
Yeah.
like, this is all I can think about. I'm like, I cannot, and I couldn't even concentrate on pushing because I was just like, if I shit on the table, I'm gonna fucking die here.
So you're not even really pushing like with full force if you're thinking about that
No.
because you're trying to hold something in when
Exactly.
your body needs you to push everything out.
Right. And they're like, push like you're having a bowel movement. And I'm just like, you don't understand. We can't have this conversation here.
You're like, that's what I'm trying to avoid.
I don't want to.
Oh,
Anyway,
fuck.
so yeah, it was a good time. And then like my favorite part, she was like, she's like, here, just give me your hand. She was like, he's crowning. And she's like, give me your hand. She's like, I'll let you, you can feel it. I'm like, I don't need to. And she's like, well, do you want to see it with a mirror? I'm like, no.
See, I think I would have been all about the mirror. I feel like it would have been strange to reach it. For one, my arms are not that fucking long, and I had trouble reaching down there with the very pregnant belly. I can't imagine being able to reach all the way back there,
Yeah.
trying to feel a head. You know,
All I'm gonna say is
there's my cat. If you're hearing a little purr,
cat.
jumping on the table. Go ahead.
All I can say is this. I didn't want to see a mirror. And I
No.
didn't want to see a mirror because all I could think at that point was if I see a head coming out of there at this point, what's going to happen is I am going to be scared for life. I'm
Yeah.
just going to be like, that's it. It's destroyed.
You're always going to see one. See, I'm the opposite. I would have, well, I say that now, but even going into it,
Yeah.
that was, what I wanted to do. I was going to not take any drugs if I could help it, but I was going to go with the flow. I wanted to squat.
Mm-hmm.
I had planned that I was going to hold the bar and squat, and that if I did have to go like another way, that I definitely wanted like the mirror there so I could see what I was doing. Anyway, didn't go
No.
that way, but we'll get to that.
Anyway, it got to the point where I was just like, okay, I didn't want to see any of that stuff. They tried to get Jason to look. He didn't want to look either, obviously, because he's not down with that.
No, God love them.
Then it just got to the point where I was like, okay, this baby's got to come out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, I looked at Jason and I was like, you. And then I pointed at Mom and I was like, you, everybody get out. Get out.
Yeah. So it was just better at that point by yourself.
Oh, 100%. So I
Mm-hmm.
kicked the two of them out. The two of them kind of just looked at each other like over me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, yeah, no, I mean it. Get out.
Yeah.
Right?
Not your choice.
And then the two of them like went into the room because I was in the labor and delivery room. It was just like there was a waiting room right next to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they laughed at me afterwards because the two of them were in there having the friggin' time laughing at me because I was in the room and they could hear me yelling at the doctors asking them if they would just reach up and take the baby out.
Oh, God love you.
Right. Anyway, it turns out they wouldn't.
No, you got to do. You're on your own with that.
You're on your own with that, right? So yeah. Anyway, he came out. He was best kind, and yeah, it was a good time. And
How was your recovery?
a
Like,
lot
did you tear?
easier. No, I actually didn't. I didn't even need a stitch.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I guess. I mean, I got a stretchy vagina.
Well, I mean, I could have told you that, Crystal.
But I mean, realistically, like that's the best case
Elastic
scenario.
vag.
I know, right? And I kind of wondered, like, maybe if me not pushing so hard kind of like helped with the stretching, so that way it didn't tear. Because I guess I hear a lot of people say that if they like really push really hard, really fast, and
Yeah,
like
it's like
pop the baby out, it just.
they say you're supposed to go like with the contractions, that the contractions are there. But it's funny because again, I didn't experience any of that. I had a C-section, but
Right.
they say that you're supposed to go like when you're contracting, that's when you're supposed to relax, but that's the least, like you can't relax because you're in so much pain, but that, I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me, but some people can master it.
Yeah, I don't know at this point, and I have no fucking plan of actually trying it again. Not ever.
It's gonna need a lot of work if you're gonna have another baby.
Yeah, no doubt.
To like get surgery first to allow your parts to work again.
Yeah, no thanks. I'm not in for it. Nope. But
yeah. So what about your next two? How do those labors go?
Well, the second one was much like yours in that well, he was early. But we had some issues with him anyway because I wasn't 100% sure how he was going to turn out with everything because he had a hole in his stomach. Just a little backstory. So like he actually I guess the skin didn't form properly, so some of his intestine was actually hanging out all while he was hanging out in there.
I remember that.
Yeah. So but they told me that they were going to let me just deliver regularly as long as everything went fine.
Were you afraid of that though? Like, I feel like Yeah, like if someone said to me, okay, there's parts of your baby that are supposed to be inside that are
Mhm.
actually outside, but that's
Yep.
fine. We still want you to push it through this little vagina.
Yeah.
I just that scares the shit out of me because I'm like, what if a part gets stuck and like tears away?
All I could think of, all I could think was like something was gonna get like snagged. Like it was,
Mhm.
you know what I mean?
Like a wool sweater on a ring.
Yes. That's all I could think, right? Like, I used to have
Okay.
nightmares and everything about it.
Mhm.
That was all I could think. It was just like, "Why don't you just pull it out some more?" Like, doesn't even make sense, right?
I mean, they're doctors. Like they know what they're doing. They're not going to advise it if that's going to happen. But I would be the same way. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, just to
No.
me, it didn't make sense, but whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so they were kept keeping an eye on him for a long time, and then oddly enough, Jason had gotten a call, or I had gotten a call because he was working away at the time. So he was doing like the 3 weeks on and the 1 week off, or 1 week off up in Alberta.
Mhm.
And he had called me, I guess, that couple of days beforehand because he was supposed to come back that Friday. And he said, they want me to stay for an extra week. And I was like, well, that's fine. Like, the baby's not due for another month, like
Mhm.
5 weeks. So I was just like, it's better to stay now than
Have to do
ask
it later.
next month. Right.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, I know, you're right. Still early. We're still okay. Right. And I was like, yeah, like, I'm not having any feeling like I'm going anytime soon. So that was like the Friday. And I went over to my mom's, I guess, on Saturday because I had Ethan obviously already. So we were over there and hanging out and whatnot. And I can still remember like I went to the store, picked up a box of Crunch Munch because I was like massively craving it, right? I sat down, demolished the whole box. And I'm sitting there on the couch, and all of a sudden, I just like, I get tired. You know what it's like at the end of in your third trimester. You're tired all the time, like, right?
Trimester, first day of the
Right.
first trimester.
It's true though.
When are you not tired when you're pregnant?
It's true.
Yeah.
So like mom was just watching Ethan basically for me, and I sat down on her couch and I just kind of like passed out solid on the couch. And then the next thing I knew, I woke up because I felt so nauseous. And then I threw up from 3 o'clock that day on the 5th of April until the very next day until he was out.
Wow.
Because I was every 15 minutes barfing my guts up. And honestly, I often wonder if that actually was what put me into labor because I ended
Because
up,
you're like pushing so much, you mean?
I
Your
guess, I don't
body?
know, right? Like, so I ended up saying to mom in the morning afterwards because I was like drinking water just so I had something to throw up. I was just
Right.
constant. And the next morning, she actually drove us home and then stayed on the couch with me. So, and she called my aunt and she looked after Ethan because she said, well, I said, like, I'm having contractions. And I was like, I don't know if they're just like Braxton Hicks. I don't know what's going on, but they seem to be getting closer and closer. Right.
Mhm.
And she was like, okay, well, it's just well take you in and get you checked out just to be on the safe side. So she brought me into the case room and they put the monitor on me and everything, and they checked and they were like, yep, you're definitely having contractions. And then the problem was though is that every time that I would have a contraction, his heart rate would drop right down into the 70s.
Wow.
So they basically just looked at me and they were like, so just want to let you know, we're gonna have to take him.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay. And she, like, the nurse was just like, oh, okay, like, you're okay. And I'm like, listen, do what you got to do. Just get him out safely. Like, if there's a
Yeah.
problem, get him
Yeah.
out. Right.
Yeah. That was
Basically.
my mentality too. It was like,
Of course
okay,
it is. Do
get
what you
get
got
to
to do.
work.
Yep.
Get it done.
And she was like, well, she's like, is there anybody that we need to call? Like, where's dad? And I'm like, Alberta.
Yeah. You might
So,
not make it in the
right.
next hour.
Yeah. So like mom calls him and she's like, hey, Jason. He's like, yeah. She's like, well, Crystal's in having the baby. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna get everything arranged. Like this was 11:45 that morning, right?
Wow.
I'm gonna get everything arranged. I'm gonna be on the next flight to get home. I mean, it's 8 hour flight guaranteed anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. He could have
So
left that minute. It wasn't
yeah,
he's not making it.
no. So anyway, mom was in with me, and of course they went in for the C-section and whatnot. And like I was nervous, obviously, because I didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, I hadn't had a C-section before,
Mhm.
and then the nurses come over, and of course, as they're prepping you to get in there, they come over and they start like shaving the spots where
Oh yeah.
where you need the incision or whatever. And I'm like looking at them going, huh, I had no idea I was coming in for a haircut. Right? I'm like, what's wrong with me? Why would I
I was
say that?
cracking jokes too. Is it
Of
something in the
course.
epidural that like
I
makes you
think it's just
funny?
us. I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's
But
also like it's the nerves too.
yeah,
Like it's kind of one of the ways that we deal with
100%.
like what's the word?
Stressful situations and just like,
Stress. Yeah.
de-escalate the stress, right? By like throwing a bit of humor into it.
Funny.
Yeah, it was. But I don't know if you had this, but, and I mean, like, other than that, Harper's was pretty well non-eventful because it was just like a planned C-section. It was just like, here, go on in this day and just go get cut open. Best kind. Sounds
And
great.
was that because you had already had a C-section that they didn't
Yeah.
recommend a vaginal birth? Because I
Yeah.
remember you saying with Harper, you really wanted to go for a vaginal. They call it a VBAC for anybody listening. It's a vaginal birth after cesarean.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying that you really wanted to go for that, but your doctor was strongly, recommending that you didn't.
I basically like told her that I wanted to do it, and that I kind of left it up to chance. It was more or less like, I'm going to say that if I go into labor, then we're going to let this happen.
Mhm.
But if the C-section date comes first, then we'll do the C-section. I'm just leaving it up to fate, basically.
Right.
And like, I had to sign a huge legal document in order for me to say that I was willing to go with it, because she had to basically absolve herself from any type of legal.
Absolutely. If anything were to happen, you come back and you're like, you should have told me different. And she's like,
Yeah.
I did. You're a crazy
Right.
pregnant lady who didn't want to fucking listen to me.
Right. Yeah, I know, but I mean, like, I just found with both of them, with the C-sections, and I don't know if it happens to everybody, but number one, I was throwing up the whole time,
Oh, wow.
the whole time, and I
For
wonder if,
both?
oh yeah, I was like on my back throwing up out of the side of my mouth in a kidney pan, and I
Oh my
think
God.
part of it was like the epidural, but I was getting
Yeah.
referred pain. So like, I was getting a referred pain for both of them up in my shoulder. It
Oh
was
my God. Like you don't have to deal with enough.
right.
You get a C-section, recovery is going to be a bitch, but then they're like, hey, we'd like you to still have some pain during this delivery. So here's some fucking shoulder pain.
Man, if you could only know how much drugs they pumped me full of just to
I
friggin' try
bet.
to deal with it, it was
Yeah.
brutal. I had that many shots of morphine in me, it was ridiculous.
That is awful, but also like great.
Yeah. Well, once it kicked in, it was great.
Yeah. No, mine, I didn't feel that. I'm like, sorry, my cat is jumping up. Like, cats are dicks. Don't get a cat. For everybody who wants a cat, don't get a cat. Get down. We'll edit this out. Maybe we'll leave this in because it makes it interesting.
That's true.
He's out like getting into whatever he can because he wants my attention. So he's trying
Sure.
to like do things that I would normally get mad about. But yeah, no, with mine, so we were planning, I had a very quote unquote healthy pregnancy.
Mhm.
So there was nothing wrong from start to finish. Like I was very lucky to be able to have a healthy pregnancy, right? Baby was healthy. I was somewhat healthy, 50 pounds heavier, but healthy nonetheless.
Yep.
Blood pressure was good, I was walking a bit. I had planned to be this little petite, gorgeous pregnant woman with the big old belly at the gym doing fucking like overhead bar squats.
Right.
Like this is the goal, right? And even when like the first couple of weeks of my pregnancy, I was like on the elliptical. I was like, oh, it's gonna be such a healthy pregnancy. And then I just fucking dwindled. Like I was so sick.
Yeah,
So
but that's it.
yeah, like it was just I was tired, I was sick, and
That's
I
what
was
I
like,
was
you know
like
what?
too.
Give me a pack of Mr. Noodles and just fuck off. Like
Yeah,
I ate what I wanted, I did what I wanted, and I'm happy I did.
me too.
No, no regrets. It's an inside joke that me and Drew have. Anyway, I'll get back to that someday. But no
Okay.
regrets, no regrets. So
Right.
anyway, when it came time to like all my checkups were normal.
Mhm.
Um, it was Drew's diaper party, I believe, because me and you and Selena all went into Selena's house
Yep.
so that Drew could have the guys over and get loaded, basically. So like guys have way more fun when the
Seriously.
woman is pregnant. For one, they're not fucking pregnant.
Right.
And for 2, like we get like this big baby shower where everybody's touching our stomachs and asking us how we're feeling. And all we want to do is take a nap or cry.
Yep.
And like you're walking around trying to feel pretty. You can't fucking fit into your clothes. Like I swear to God, if I had to bend over at my baby shower, I had bought the shirt new. It was the only size they had left and it was a size too small. And I didn't have any other clothes that I could fit into. So I bought it anyway. And I just remember being at the baby shower and walking around like, don't reach for the gifts. Like, don't reach too far. Don't hug people all the way around because you are going to hulk out of this shirt. Like it was hanging on by a thread. So like, they don't get any of that. And then we're walking around our baby shower, like, please just be over.
Yep.
And then their diaper party's like, hey guys, everybody pick up a box of diapers, come over to the house and let's get hammered.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, they were enjoying that. I drove to CBS to hang out with you guys. And what did we eat? We were eating like
we had
dip.
We had a veggie tray, we had some dip, we had some chips, like
we're just kind of like snacking and watching movies and stuff.
Yep.
But the thing is, like, I was cleaning that whole day to like so the guys could trash the house. Right. And then when I drove, it was like, Selena's house at the time was like what, 35, 40 minutes. And I remember it was a shitty night. Yeah. Like it was a shitty driving night. So, I'm driving extra slow, whatever. So like, we'll call it a long day. Right. Yeah. I'm tired every hour of my pregnancy. Like I was just always tired. So this is nearing the end. I think I was 36 weeks. Yeah. Cause you're considered full term at 37 weeks and I was 36 weeks. Like exactly. So on the drive home, like everything was all good. I get home, the guys are still there. So I stay up and I have a chat with everybody and like, cause I'm also a very social person. So I was just staying up, having a chat and I wasn't like, I didn't want them to go. I wasn't asking anybody to leave, whatever. So I stayed up, I'd say it was probably another hour, hour and a half. So this is like maybe 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. So then everybody leaves, we tidy up a bit, go to bed. And then the next morning, I remember I woke up and I went to the bathroom and there was like, I don't know how to explain the size of it, but it was bigger than coins. Like I had like this big spot, like wet spot on my underwear when I went to pee. And I was like, oh shit. So they tell you in like all the baby courses that you do leading up to it that, if you have any kind of like liquid or fluid or anything like that, especially close to the end of your pregnancy, to log it. Because if you do call into the case room to see if it is your water, they're going to ask you these questions. So, they want to know like if it's clear, if it had an odor, whatever. So it was clear there was no odor. So I took my phone and I made a little note, the date and the time that it happened. And then I was like, okay, but like nothing else is here. And it was just on my underwear. Like it didn't. So I literally left the bathroom and I went back down the hallway and I checked the bed to see if it was wet. I checked the hallway to see if I could see any drips or drops because I didn't feel anything. I peed.
No. Yeah.
But then I'm thinking now, like hindsight's 2020, that me peeing could have been like the whoosh that everybody says.
Maybe.
Right. So I still to this day don't really know. So I went on, but like that flashed in my head because at this point I didn't have a hospital bag packed. I didn't have anything ready. Like literally, I was still working.
Yeah.
I was still fucking working. So this was a Sunday. And I had an OB appointment the next morning on Monday morning. So I was like, okay, like I'm fine. I feel good. I immediately went to all Scarlett's baby clothes that I did get at the shower. And I just started washing. I started washing, I think blankets the weekend before. And I just started washing like her onesies and stuff. And I was like, I just need clean stuff. And we weren't ready. I didn't have a dresser to put her clean clothes in. I put all of her clean clothes in her bassinet because her crib was full of all the other stuff that we had because we were still finishing her bedroom. Because the whole time I was pregnant and currently to this day, we're doing renovations on our fucking house. So the entire pregnancy, we were doing renovations and, laying floor and getting her bedroom ready. And anyway, so it wasn't ready when she was born. But that as the day went on, I was peeing a lot, but I was also trying to drink a lot of water. So that night, I remember I was starting to get freaked out because I was starting to get shots of pain. And I would they tell you to rock, to stop and like rock. So anyway, I told my husband, I was like, I'm nervous. I'm afraid that I might be in labor. And my mucus plug started to come out. That was another thing. So everything that I looked at said that it was totally normal for that time of my pregnancy, that your mucus plug would start to detach, but it was getting more and more, like it was detaching a lot that day. So my mucus plug was going, I was peeing all the time. I was having these shots of pain. You think in your mind, you'd be like, you should probably call the case room and go to the hospital. But in my head, I was like, we should go to Walmart and pack a bag for the hospital, maybe buy like some clothes for me to wear, because like nothing fit.
Yep.
So we went to Walmart. I had to get like new pajamas to wear. I had to like literally everything that I would need at the hospital, I had to buy.
Yeah.
So I went to the hospital and went to Walmart. I was having contractions in the aisle. So I remember like we were walking and Drew would be like, do you want me to take you to the hospital? I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. Like, we're good. On the way home, we stopped and got Big Macs. I was also hungry.
Yep.
And then we got into the house and I was too tired to wash all the stuff that I had just bought. So we watched 2020 and ate Big Macs and then went to bed. And I was still having these pains and I was still peeing every 5 minutes. It got more and more as the night went on. And I had said to him, like, if I wake up in the middle of the night in pain or my water breaks or whatever, because at this point I still didn't know it had gone, we'll call the case room, we'll go over.
Yeah.
Right. But, or my mucus plug, like, if I bleed or whatever. Right. But at this point I was like, I think we're still fine. And the pain that I was feeling was like fucking period cramps. Like it was worse. Yeah. It was like worse than period cramps, but not bad. Like I was like, there's no way this is what people complain about. Like that wasn't it. So
that would be early labor.
Exactly. So I went to the OB the next morning. I woke up and I went to the OB. She didn't think that my water had gone. So she did and that was the appointment that I had to get the anal swab. Like they swab you for a certain bacteria. Yep. So so close to skipping that.
Right.
Because there wasn't even enough time to get the results back. So they had to, whatever it was that they had to determine to do with the babies. I don't know if that was where they had to put fucking stuff on them or whatever. They had to do it with Scarlett anyway, because they didn't have the results back from my swab.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had my swab and she felt for the baby and she felt like the head was down. She's like, oh yeah, head's down, whatever. She said, it doesn't sound like you're in labor. She said, you probably peed. However, I'm going to recommend you go to the case room anyway and just get a swab. Right. Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, if I am in labor, will they keep me? She said, yes. Right. So I'm like, okay, well, fuck, we got to go home and pack that bag.
Right.
I also had to work. Right. So, and I was hungry. So we left the OB's office and I'm like, and Drew's like, well, what do you want to do? Let's go to the hospital. I said, well, I told so-and-so that I was going to price up their house. So, I'm going to meet them this afternoon. That's not going to take long. Let me at least then I got my notes. Right. So I was like, can you take me to Tim Hortons first? So I get a breakfast sandwich, because if they do keep me in the hospital, they're not going to let me eat.
No.
So I was like, and I'm hungry. So we go to Tim Hortons. I get a breakfast sandwich and a hash brown. I eat it in the car outside my client's house. I go into, that was a client that, it never really formed into anything after, because I was in labor and then I was in the hospital for a while, and God love them. I was like, I'll get you that assessment. And I just never did. Right. It was one of those situations, right? Like I should have handed it off to my backup, we'll say, but I was having a baby.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went into the house and I walked around and took all my notes and went on to price it up. And then I went home and then packed the hospital bag. Then we threw the hospital bag in the back of the car and went over. So this was hours later.
Yeah.
We get in and we're talking to the doctors, and the doctors don't think that it was my water. Nobody thought that my water broke.
Right.
Nobody. Yep. So anyway, she comes in and it's a resident again, it's teaching hospital. So there's 6 people in with me. Yep. And one girl was explaining who she was. She's like, do you mind if I examine you? And God love her. I still feel bad for it, but I was like, no, because I was so nervous. I didn't know what was really going on.
Yeah.
And I was just afraid, I just didn't want anything to happen to the baby.
Yep.
So anyway, I said no. And so, the doctor came in and she did a swab, and the resident came back with the results. And she's like, no, I let the resident swab me, but there was an intern. I don't know the names. There was one who was in school and one who was doing her residency, and then a doctor. Right. Anyway, so the resident I did let swab. Mm-hmm. So she had to swab, and she said if it's amniotic fluid, it turns whatever color.
Right.
And if it's not, it turns this color. Right. And my color was in between. It was like a blue, and it should have been green or yellow or something.
Right.
And I was like, Okay, so what does that mean? She said, we just got to look at it on slides now. So then they had to put it on a slide and put it under a microphone or microscope. They come back and she's like, yeah, so it is amniotic fluid. So your water is broken. I'm like, but there was no bush, whatever. And they say, it's not always like you see in TV where you're standing there and then there's a puddle underneath you.
It could just be a steady leak in your case.
In my case, because thinking back on it, I'm like, so every time I peed, which was constant, that because my OB had said to me, she's like, no, she said, if it was your water, it would still continue leaking. And I'm like, well, my underwear aren't wet, but in my defense, I was also wearing a pad because of my mucus plug.
Right.
So it just, hindsight, I was in labor, but I had no idea.
No.
So anyway, I asked her, I said, do I get to go home now? Like, are you going to, because she said, we're going to induce you. And I was like, is it the type where you give me the thing and then I go home for a bit and I come back and have the baby? Like, what are we talking here?
Yeah.
And she's like, no, you're in the hospital now because it had been over 24 hours since my water had broken.
Right.
And I could have risked infection.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, fuck. So you're telling me I'm going to have the baby in the next 2 days, 48 hours. And you're putting me into labor today. Right. And she's like, yeah. So me and Drew just looked at each other because before that we were talking about what we were going to have for supper. Like we were going to stop into the Bigs because we had both had, he's like, you got your ass swabbed this morning. I think you deserve fucking restaurant food. Let's go get nachos on the way home, Yeah. So it was just one of those things. And then she's like, no, we're going to induce you. So two of us looked at each other like, we're going to have a baby in a couple of days.
Right.
And then the senior doctor came in and he was like, did anybody check to see if the head was down? I'm like, yeah, no, my OB told me it was down this morning. So the OB had gotten mixed up between the bum and the head. So for whatever reason, you can't always tell for sure.
No, of course. How can you?
So they do the ultrasound.
Right.
And she was breech. So then they look at me, they're like, okay, we actually have to take you in for an emergency C-section.
Right.
Because the water had been broke for so long and all this stuff. We have no method of turning her at this point. It's just too dangerous. So I'm like, so we're going to have the baby today? And the doctor's like, you're going to have the baby within an hour.
Yeah. It's so fast.
It was just, and then this swarm of nurses start just come right in. Before then it was bare. We were the only people in the room, aside from a couple of residents. And all of a sudden these nurses just come in and they just start swapping me and putting on these bracelets and taking they're like, sign here. What's this number? And I'm just I had no idea what was going on.
So much happening at one time.
And I remember Drew was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah. He's like, you're going to have a baby. And I was like, yeah. And I was just so calm, so calm. I was just like, okay, so I'm going to have the baby. So I call mom and I'm like, so I dropped my truck off at GMC this morning to be serviced. And I'm going to need dad to go pick that up because I'm going in now to have the baby. That's how I told her I was going in for a C-section. And she was at work. And I remember she was like, what? I was like, yes, I'm sorry. I'm going in to have the baby. Don't worry. That's what I told her. I was like, don't worry about it. They're going to take me in now. She's going to be here, within the next couple of hours. Stay home. You don't need to take any time off work. You work. This is instinct just took over and I was completely calm. But meanwhile, I was actually in shock.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I was like, don't come over. Don't want you here yet. I'll let you know when she's out and then you guys can come over and visit.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I told Drew the same thing. So as I'm being wheeled into the room, they get me all prepped. I look and Drew's dad is already in the waiting room with his head peeking in through. So there's a waiting room that you can peek into the floor. His head is peeking into the floor, just trying to capture a glimpse of anything. Yeah. And he's darting in, Fred. So that's his personality. He's just so funny. He's there and his eyes are darting back and forth looking for me. So as I wheel by, he gets super excited. He's waving to me and I'm just like, oh my God. And my thought is I told mom and dad to stay home and now Drew's parents are here and my parents are not going to be here at the same time as his parents.
Right.
And I felt bad. I'm going into surgery to have this baby out. Anyway. So Drew comes in. The scariest thing for me ever, the biggest fear that I had was an epidural because the thought of something going into my back freaked the fucking shit out of me. It still does. I still don't know how I did it because that was my biggest fear. I was like, I don't care. Fucking shoot me up in the arms, whatever. I don't care about the drugs. I just don't want the epidural.
Yeah.
So now I had to get a spinal and an epidural.
Yeah.
And I remember the nurse, I think her name was Keisha. Like, I'll never forget her. She was, honestly, she just looked like an angel in that moment because I'm in shock. I don't know what the fuck's going on. They don't let the dad in with you when you're getting your spinal.
No.
So Drew was outside the room. I didn't know who any of these people were. They were all doctors. And she was just like, held me, was like, hey, look at me. She was like my coach. She was like, you look me in the eye right now. Right. And she's like, okay, listen, put your head here. I put my head on her shoulder. She's like, don't think about it. Just breathe. And she totally, like, to this day, I'm like, if I could find her and just send her, I don't know, like a big bottle of wine or something, like something to get drunk, because that's just
so
nice.
Good.
But yeah, so she was amazing. And then they did the epidural and spinal. And I remember I got really dizzy. I almost passed out. Like, cause I guess the nerves, I remember my heart just like racing. And then I laid down and everything was hilarious. I laid down and I just remember the feeling. I was like, oh my God. Like, I was just so happy.
Yeah.
And then within, a half hour, the only thing I can remember feeling is the tugging.
Yes.
So as they're cutting through me, I didn't feel a fucking thing. But then all of a sudden, and Drew said to me, he's like, I remember I was there with you and your whole body was shifting on the table because they were like tugging and pulling to get the baby out. And then they gave me the baby. And I just remember, because you're lid down.
Yeah.
So I'm lying back. And as they're trying to hand her to me, I couldn't see her. So they put her on my chest. But because of the way that I was lid down, I just remember being like, I can't see her. I can't see her. Like, put her up to me. I can't see her. Like, I didn't know what was going on. But I was in shock for probably 2.5 days after that.
Yeah.
Like, I had expected to go in and decide if I was going to have drugs or not. And then like take them when the nurse said, like, similar to your first experience.
Yeah.
That was my plan, was like, I'm just going to go in and I'm going to do what I can. And then if they say, I think you should take the epidural, then I'll take the epidural. I wasn't opposed to it.
No.
But I also thought that would happen, at 40 weeks.
40 weeks. Yeah.
So 36 and 2 days, she's still considered a preemie. So we call her preemish because she was almost cooked. 37 weeks is full cooked. And then you get another 3, my math skills, another 3 weeks before they usually deliver. So at that point, I just didn't, I don't know. I was in shock. Like, I can remember being in the hospital room the very next night. And I mean, being awake for so long, for one, and then you're trying to take care of the baby and there's just so much going on and you can't feel your whole bottom half. Like, that doesn't come back. Right.
For a long time.
Yeah. And you're shivering. You're just cold. Like, your whole body goes in that defense. Do you remember that?
Yep.
So like, I just remember being freezing, and then everybody else is holding your baby because the parents are there. Like, the grandparents are there.
Yep.
So I just remember everybody was I'm in recovery. And I remember my mom was like, you don't look like yourself. And I'm just like, I just had a human. I don't know what's going on. And everybody's passing her around right now. I don't even want you guys in the room. Like, in my head, this one thing, I'm like, I don't want anybody here.
Yep.
But for some reason, all the grandparents are here. And, I wanted them there, but I didn't.
No.
Like, I don't know. It was just one of these things. And then it was like the very next day I had a meltdown. I was trying to hold her. I couldn't move very well. And I had to always call on a nurse or get Drew to help me and all this stuff. And then I remember Drew was like, oh, Melissa, her neck is going to go back. And he's just the concerned father, same thing. And but she was crying. And then I remember I just started screeching, like literally, like the water just started falling from my face. And the nurse was like, and I remember her because she ended up being my nurse. Where did I see her again? I saw her again down the road, and we remembered each other. And I was like, I won't forget you because you made me feel like I wasn't crazy. Because I just had a full breakdown. And she came over and she hugged me. She was like, you're fine. You just went through this traumatic experience. It was a shock. But I think that's when the shock, I guess, started to lift.
Yeah. And you finally had this moment of like, okay, this just happened. Now I need to try to process it.
Yeah. So my whole brain was trying to process the fact that I was holding this child. I'm in the hospital. I can't move my legs. I don't know what's going on. And holy fuck.
Yep.
Right. So it was just one of those crazy, crazy things. So
it's like when I had, like, Jason was actually in the room when I had her, because that was the only one that I able to be around. So, and I let him stay in there for the section. Right. But like, that's what, like, like you said, you can't really feel anything. And then besides that, I had all of this morphine in my system. So then
Mm-hmm.
besides the fact that I couldn't really feel and I was freezing and I was shivering, I had the itchies because when you're
Oh,
coming off of morphine, you
yeah.
get so itchy. Like my skin felt like it was crawling for 2 days and it was driving me nuts. And it was both of the last two, on Cole and Harper.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it was just like constantly scratching. I looked like some kind of friggin' dope fiend. It was awful.
Give
It
me
was just
more.
and it was just like, I hope nobody's walking by and seeing me do this because now they think that I'm got a crack baby. Like, I don't know. Anyway, it was just awful. And then, well, like you said, and then they're early.
Yeah.
So like when it's an emergency, like there's no
There's no
everything
preparing.
second. Like I said, I showed up at the hospital at 11:45. Cole was out by 12:54.
Yeah. Like that's crazy, right?
Right?
Crazy.
Like,
And
and
then the
I
recovery, like, what did you find? Is there an easier option? Are they both equally garbage, like delivery wise?
I would 100% take the recovery from a regular delivery.
Yeah. That's what I've heard a
Like
lot too.
like the thing is that they say that it's a 6 week recovery, but it's not really a 6 week. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it is uncomfortable. It is very
Hmm.
sore. It's like, when you go to spin class,
Hmm. I
right?
hate spin class for that reason because my vagina
Exactly.
is always sore after.
Right. Right. So
Yeah.
this is what it's like. It's like it just took a real bad pounding.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
She's not the kind you want.
right, exactly. So that's what I mean, right? But I mean, like, and it lasts for a little while, but the swelling goes down, and like, I mean, you can put some ice on it, and everything's all good. So
Yeah.
within
Are those
like,
little bottles? I was using the little pee bottle, even though I had like no, I didn't need to, but I just
well,
couldn't bend. You know what I
the thing
mean? Like
about
after the surgery. Yeah. So I was
yeah,
just, I kept it. I think it's in the
oh
garbage
yeah,
now. But
that thing is wonderful,
yeah.
and like the warm water, like afterwards, it feels
Yeah.
so good.
I was
It
just going to say, I just really like the warm water.
yes, I'm just like, this is like my own personal bidet. Like, why wouldn't I want this
Yes.
forever?
I was like,
Anyway,
I might just pee like this from now on. Just fucking throw it in my
seriously.
purse. Yeah.
Right? But
Yeah.
like, yeah, I mean, other than that, it's not that bad. Like within a couple weeks, I was best kind.
Okay. That's good. Because
Right? I
that's my
mean,
thing. Like I feared the C-section because I heard
yeah.
about the recovery. And honestly, I felt so fucking useless after it. I
Hmm.
really did. Because
Hmm.
you're not allowed to lift anything over 10 pounds. You can't lift your baby. And God forbid anybody who has a 10 pound or heavier, but even a 9 or 8 pound baby,
Yeah.
like they're growing fast.
Yeah.
So like I couldn't lift my baby in a car seat, but there are people who get C-sections who aren't even supposed to lift their kids because
Yes.
it'll tear back open.
Yeah.
Right. And they don't give you the aftercare recovery. Like
No.
once you have the baby, everything is about the baby, which is great. Like you want to make sure that the baby's healthy.
Yeah.
But I remember, so I had one of my really close girlfriends had a section as well.
Hmm.
She was more premature than I was, and hers was an emergency. I think she had high blood pressure during her pregnancy.
Yep.
So she went in on a routine blood pressure check and
Hmm.
came out like
With a
she
bit.
delivered a baby. Yeah, because his heart rate had dropped so quickly.
Yep.
So I remember she was going around carrying everything. And I was like, what are you doing? Because we had her baby shower after.
Yes. Yeah.
And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, you're not supposed to lift anything that heavy. And she was like, nobody told me that. They didn't even tell her that. They told me not to lift the baby in a car
Anything.
seat
Yep.
and nothing over
Anything more
10
than
pounds.
yeah. Basically, it's like a bag of sugar.
And I remember my doctor told me not to sweep because so I was in the hospital for like 6 days or 7 days,
Yep.
5 days, between 5 and 7 days. And I remember she said, don't sweep. And I was like, what do you mean don't sweep? Like, but it was the motion.
Hmm.
You could tear it, right? So I wasn't allowed to sweep. I couldn't lift anything over 10 pounds. Now, she never said anything about driving. So I was out driving like crazy. But then
Yeah.
you're in all these mommy groups on Facebook and the age that we're in, and everybody was like, oh, when can I drive again? And I'm like, the fuck, you've been driving? So now
Because
I'm
I was
thinking I'm the
driving.
worst mom in the world because I'm driving after a C-section. And then here my girlfriend is out fucking picking her kid up in the car seat, not because nobody even gave her any aftercare stuff.
Well, like
So it's just scary.
if I hadn't driven, like the thing is that, in Cole's situation, for instance, like Jason was still working away. He came
Mhm.
home that
Yeah.
night,
Yeah.
but like Cole was in the hospital for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So I still had a 4-year-old.
So that kind of moves into our next topic, actually, is like a perfect segue. how were you postpartum? Like, did you have any kind of postpartum depression yourself?
Um, undiagnosed.
Mhm.
So, like, okay, so for instance, I mean, on Cole, probably more so because it was still such an emergency, but then I just went into survival mode
Yeah.
because Jason came home. He was home for like a week or whatever, but like, I had gotten discharged from the hospital 5 days postpartum, but I had to leave the hospital without my baby.
And that is, oh, fuck, that happens so often. And it is a
Killed me.
nightmare.
It killed
Yeah.
me. But yet I
A
also
part of you
had
was
a
gone.
4-year-old. Yeah, and I had a 4-year-old at home,
Yeah.
but yet he had like when he came out because of his stomach situation, he had surgery the day he was born. So as soon as they took him, I didn't even see his face when he was born. I wasn't allowed to go and visit him for 2 days because where I had been throwing up,
Yeah.
they thought that it might have been gastro, so I wasn't allowed to go into the NICU because it would have been putting other children
I
at risk.
I
Totally fair.
remember when he was born.
Yeah.
Like,
You came
I
and visited.
remember that.
Yep.
I did.
You did, and brought me a clear cream soda because I was totally still craving stuff. I know it's so weird, but
I
anyway,
brought you what? I
a
mean, it
clear
makes sense
cream
that I would bring
soda.
food,
Yeah,
but yeah, I
yep,
didn't
you
remember
did.
bringing you anything.
I requested it.
Okay, yeah, that makes more
Like,
sense.
do you need anything? And I'm like, clear cream soda.
I was like, that's really just a polite question. I didn't want to get you anything.
But you still brought it, so
Does anybody
whatever.
actually want to get you anything when they say, "Can I get you anything?" Like, it's
I don't
just
know, but
polite.
I took it.
Yeah. So you
But
had Ethan still at home
yeah,
and
so
back and forth to
then
hospital.
pretty much, well, yeah, like for 4 weeks I was back and forth to the hospital, and like Jason came home for a little bit, but he still had to go back to work,
Yeah.
so he came home for the week, and then he went back again for 3 weeks.
Jesus Christ.
And so basically I would get up in the morning and I would get Ethan ready. I would take him and drop him off to daycare, and I would spend the whole day over at the hospital. And then at supper time I would go and pick Ethan up, and I would come home and I would feed him, and then mom would come over and I would go back over to the hospital for the evening time.
Oh my God.
And
How long did you do that for?
the 4 weeks. And
I feel like
all the
4
while
years.
still breastfeeding technically, even though he wasn't like for the first 2 weeks he was in there, he wasn't even actually feeding. So he was I mean, he was in a medically induced coma for the first
Oh
week
my
or so. And then so like basically what I was doing was I would have to get up and I would have to set my alarm for every 3 hours. I would get up and I would have to
And
pump
pump. Oh,
and then
I
store
still
my
have
breast milk.
nightmares. Yeah, I still have nightmares about breast
The
pumps.
sound.
Like, when you're watching TV and you see somebody like pumping and that wall, like,
Oh yeah.
it triggers. It
I know.
triggers something in me. I'm like, nope, nope, turn it off.
But the worst part is like I had so much milk, and
Mhm.
so like it was like they were laughing at me in the NICU because it was just like they uh they said like you have like a huge storage, like a full shelf to yourself of just stored milk, and I'm just like, well, bye. I mean, if he needs it, he needs it,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I did that for 4 weeks, and then finally Jason came home, and he was home on his last week, and we were doing Ethan's birthday party, and we had Ethan's
My
birthday party.
God.
Yeah, we had Ethan's birthday party, and then we left Ethan's birthday party and went to pick him up from the hospital because I didn't want to take him
Oh,
out of the hospital before the party because then
yeah.
everybody would have been grabbing him. And the
Hmm.
funny thing is that like I think this is where I didn't realize that I probably had the postpartum at the time
Hmm.
because I was so rigid.
What do you
And
mean?
you know what? Like I probably did on Ethan, to be fair. Like I didn't want him to come home because if and before the birthday party because I didn't want him to be handed around to people. Didn't
Right.
want him being handed all over the place.
Hmm.
Like even when I think back to his christening. On his christening, I brought him and I was so hyper vigilant about like who was touching him and all of this stuff. And it used to freak me right out about people just randomly touching him and whatnot. And then like we went in for his christening and they were like, oh yeah, so at the end of the christening, we're just going to you'll all stand up and then you'll present your children to the congregation and then you'll line up with your baby in your arms and everybody will come by and they lay their hand on your baby or give them a kiss to welcome them into the church community. And I legitimately stood up and basically put my hand up and I was like, what if I don't want to do that?
Yeah. So
And
that
she was
was
just
like,
like, well, why wouldn't you want to do that? And
ask you that now in
right?
2021.
Why wouldn't you
Like,
want to do that? She said. And I was just like, well, because like my child was premature. He
yeah,
had a whole surgery. He's had enough going on. I don't want him, put into a
touching
situation where he
people.
could get some type of cold that could cause an issue. Like, I don't want that.
Mhm.
And she actually looked at me and said, well, why don't you just put him in a bubble?
I remember that.
Yeah, like
I can
that was
remember that. So
probably the only time I wanted to punch somebody that was a church
in,
person.
in church, yeah.
Yeah.
So the funny thing about that is that like, I don't even know if that's so much postpartum. Like the rigidness, like I get, but with a premature baby,
Yeah.
I don't see how you could not be like that.
Well, the only thing that I like, and this is where I say I don't know that it was,
Mhm.
but at the same time, when I look back through it now, so like I did look up um, some signs of it um, afterwards, but it's like, okay, somebody said something like the say the adherence to like a rigid schedule,
Mhm.
like with Ethan, I was very, very rigid. Like nap time was nap
That's a
time,
sign.
apparently.
Hmm, that's
Like,
interesting.
and the fact, like, I would never go past, like, this was my schedule. This is what works for me.
Hmm.
Nobody is making me change the schedule.
Yeah.
And I needed that schedule because I needed to feel some semblance of control in my life.
Yeah.
And everything else was so out of control that I needed to make sure that this was something I could control.
Yeah,
Right. So when it
absolutely.
kept to feeding times, like I'm not even joking, feeding times, nap times, like this is bedtime, this is happening at this time. We are not changing it for anybody. I don't give a fuck.
Mm. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Because people would just be like, "Oh, well, what's the big deal?" And it's like, it is a big deal because if I don't have him in bed at this specific time, then he gets overtired, and then I
Yeah.
have to deal with the shit,
Yeah. I'm
right?
like that now.
So, but it's true.
That's why I'm like, is that a sign?
Well, and it kind of
What about
is.
2 years later?
They say that it is, and I mean, realistically, you don't realize, I don't think that um, postpartum can be not just right
Depression.
after. It's,
Hmm.
it's not right after. Now, the other side of that is like they say that men also can
Hmm.
experience postpartum.
Yeah.
I and I'm gonna say something at
Tell
the
us what
risk
you're
of
thinking,
sounding.
Crystal.
I am. I'm gonna say something at the risk of sounding like a complete fucking dick, but I don't really care.
Why the
Right?
fuck not?
Right? Exactly. Here's the thing: depression postpartum is different than postpartum depression.
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, yes, they can experience some type of depression after the baby is born. It's not fucking postpartum depression.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah. Like,
You
well,
can
well,
have your
female, it's
child.
chemical.
It is.
It's
It's
a chemical.
100% chemical,
Yeah.
right? So it's like it's chemical. There's so many hormones happening at the same time. Everything's going up and down and all over the Jesus place. Like you literally just had like the heights of progesterone in your body and the heights of
Mhm.
estrogen in your body, and then all of a sudden you're friggin' pushing out this little life force. Like it is a very traumatic event, whichever way that you decide that you're going to have it. It's a lot on a body.
And then once the baby is out, everything flips to baby.
Right. Exactly. Nobody gives a shit about you,
Yeah.
and
And
everything.
everybody wants to come see the baby.
Right.
Oh, when can
And
I get in to see the baby? Like, how about never, Karen?
well, and then you're like,
Fuck
yes.
off.
But then you're guilted because it's just like, okay, well, if you're not ready for me to come and see the baby,
Hmm.
that's that's your problem,
Yeah.
right? But that's not how it should be at all. The thing is
No,
like, when I sit down and I say, okay, like I remember what I was like, and I had a really hard time adjusting as it was,
I do too. Yeah.
and then you're trying to breastfeed, and like it was
Oh my
different
God,
on
your tits are always out. Like, I'm sorry.
everything.
When you first have a baby, it's stupid to even put on a shirt.
It is. It's ridiculous,
Yeah.
right? Like they were always out. It was just 24/7 all of the time. Like,
Yeah.
and sorry, I don't want to be on display for everybody. Sometimes I'm just, you know what? I'm not ready to entertain.
And listen, you can be all free the nipple and breastfeeding is normal and all that stuff. That's all great. But when you first have a baby and you're trying to learn how to even put a nipple in a kid's mouth and how to get them to latch and how to tell if they're even drinking or whatever,
Yep.
it feels uncomfortable to be doing that with other people around. It just, you want it to feel natural. I remember being in the hospital bed with visitors and being like, no, 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 it's fine. And like me saying it, like I was trying to
Yeah.
convince myself that I was okay with it.
Mhm.
While inside I was like, fuck, I really just wish it was me and the baby right now.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
but
this is
like,
the thing. We don't get an opportunity, and like it's I understand that there's excitement and stuff like that, but
mhm,
the problem becomes that we don't give moms enough of an opportunity to get to know their new role as a parent and as a
yeah,
mother and as a food source and
mhm,
whatever else, and then deal with the fact that they're trying to recover, whether it's from a C-section or whether it's from a different type. We just don't give them enough of an opportunity to get into that role before we start throwing them into like friggin' entertaining
mhm,
and like now I got to try to make you happy and try to make you happy. It shouldn't be about that. And you
yeah.
know what? That honestly, I think it adds to the postpartum.
Well, I think that's where a lot of it can come from. So
Mhm.
I, again, not, I'm going to say self-diagnosed.
Yes.
And I'm going to say self-diagnosed postpartum anxiety
Hmm.
because after I had the baby, for one, I was so in shock at everything that happened. It took me, like a couple of days to even process what had happened.
Yeah.
Then when we finally did, and the roller coaster of emotions that happen once the baby is out of you, like
Hmm.
you're up 1 second, you're down the next, like it is a ride.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling like, okay, people talk about postpartum depression, but nobody told me about this. Nobody told me about the immediate hormonal feelings that
Hmm.
I was going to get. Right.
Yeah.
So, you're balancing that. You come out of hospital, you're trying to settle in with this new life of this, like, I'm sorry, this is a stranger. It's your
Yeah.
baby. You just met them.
Yeah.
Like, I remember I took
100%.
Scarlett home and I'm like, I've known you 5 days.
Yeah.
Like, but you're
Right.
also, and especially like as a new mom, you don't know, oh, you can tell because their cries are different. I don't think I noticed her different cries until she was like 8 months old. Like
100%.
I
It
had
takes a
no, people were
while.
like, oh, there's a different cry for sleeping and for hunger. I'm like, good for you, but I have no idea how to figure that out. That makes you feel like a bad mom.
Yep.
With the C-section, you can't do anything. So you feel like a
Nothing.
useless person
Hmm.
and a useless mom. You're
Yep.
learning how to breastfeed, but you're not, you don't know how to do it. You feel useless. And again, so if you can't carry your baby in a car seat and your husband's working or there isn't a husband, you're a single mom, whatever, because it
Hmm.
happens, like that's
Yep.
life. They're like, oh, well, come to the breastfeeding clinic. Okay, how am I going to get there if I can't put my kid in and out of the car seat?
Yeah.
How am I going to get there if I can't stand up straight yet? Because
Yeah.
that took a couple of days just to be able
Oh
to
my
stand up
God.
straight, right?
So
So
bad.
there's so much recovery and healing that you're going through. I think one of the things with me that I started to realize was, again, so you said, when you said rigid, I was like, yes.
Yeah.
So I was very rigid, but I was very controlling with the baby.
Hmm.
Everything I had thought postpartum depression was disconnection.
Yeah.
You're disconnected from the baby, you don't love it, and all this sort of stuff. Because that's what's portrayed as postpartum depression. So
Hmm.
I was like, I even told my doctor, I was like, I'm not sad. Like I'm very happy and I'm
Hmm.
super connected to this baby. Like I remember being like, I definitely don't have postpartum depression because I love her so much. But
Yeah.
for me, it was to the point that I was like, because I've heard a lot of people who have postpartum depression who like they don't want to hold their baby.
Right.
I always wanted to hold the baby. I
Yeah.
only wanted to hold the baby.
Yeah.
I was so overly protective. I
That you didn't want
hated
anybody
having,
else holding her.
yeah, like, but then at the same time, being a people pleaser, and in my head, everything was tugging at me. I also wanted to be that mom who was just really good at being a mom. So,
Yeah.
oh yeah, let her cry. Oh, that's fine. Like you can hold her. Oh, like that,
Yeah. I
Melissa
know.
pleasing
Hmm.
personality was coming out. And it's like I was fighting between how I really felt because you also get so judged on, oh my God, she's so overprotective.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, just bring the baby out. That's fine. Bye. Oh, just
Yeah.
pass her around. Nothing's going to happen. But your
Well,
instincts are
that.
like, no, bring her back. And that I think adds to the stress too.
Oh, 100%, because you have so
Right.
many people who are like in your ear about it, or you know that they're in your ear, even if they're
Hmm.
not present to be in your ear. And the thing is that, and that's the other thing, like you said about the anxiety, there's a lot of talk about well, not so much. I mean, it's coming to light more often, postpartum depression, but there's a lot of postpartum anxiety as well,
Yeah.
right?
And I feel like I
You
had a
can
lot
have
of that.
both, or you
Yeah.
can have one or the other. I mean, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So, like the rigid schedule and stuff, that comes with more so the
The
anxiety.
anxiety. Yeah.
I personally was diagnosed after Harper
Right.
with both,
Hmm.
right? So, like, I did have the depression side of things. I had a harder time connecting with Harper, right?
Hmm.
And I mean, I don't know that I've ever actually said that out loud, honestly, right? But I did have a little bit of a harder time with her. Part of it, I think, was I struggled with the breastfeeding more so with her,
Yeah.
right? So, like the boys, I had an easier time breastfeeding. So,
Hmm.
because I had an easier time breastfeeding, that bond kind of happened a lot
Yeah.
quicker. Where with her, um, with two other kids going around, I had a really hard time,
Yeah.
and with the postpartum anxiety, I had a
Mhm.
really hard time calming down. And if
Yeah.
you're not calm when you're breastfeeding,
You can't
you're
do
not
it.
breastfeeding.
And
You're
I
head
mean,
down.
but on top of that, you're struggling. You know what's right. You
Yeah.
know what you feel.
Hmm.
And you're struggling with, okay, now I'm trying to breastfeed.
Yeah.
I don't want to be breastfeeding,
Right.
but everybody's telling me that I have to breastfeed.
Right.
Everybody's telling me that this is the best way. Your
Hmm.
baby's going to be sick their entire life if you don't breastfeed.
Pretty much.
They're
Stick
always going to have a cold. They're going to be stupid. You're not going to have a smart baby.
right.
Like the things that, and I mean, they're not telling you that in so many words, but they're like, oh, breastfed babies are extra, 0.2 whatever percent smarter than non-breastfed babies. And
Yeah.
fuck off.
It's
I'm
ridiculous.
sorry. Like you don't have enough stress on you
Yeah.
when you have a kid, that in your head you're also fighting with yourself and all of these other voices, because everybody has an opinion
Hmm.
about how you should feed your
Raise
child,
your kid.
whether it's in public or not, whether it's
Yep.
formula, whether it's a boob. Like they have opinions about everything, and you're struggling with your own hormones,
Yep.
and then you don't know that you have postpartum anxiety. It's like it's
Oh
a
man.
roller coaster, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
of course you're going to have trouble with it. I struggled big time with breastfeeding. I
Mm.
breastfed Scarlett and I had a huge supply. I felt so guilty when I stopped
Yep.
because I had such a big supply.
Mhm.
But pumping would send me
Yep.
into overdrive. Like I would sit down and I would just cry the entire time.
Yeah.
Hindsight, if I had my time back, I probably would have just focused on breastfeeding. But I went back to work when she was 3 weeks old. So
Exactly.
like, how do you breastfeed your child from the boob when you're working?
Yeah. That's
Right.
true.
So it's just this
And
crazy thing.
that was just another layer for you. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
most
exactly.
people in your case don't have to do that. Like, you know, we all have generally you would have your year off for your
Right.
maternity leave because like we're in Canada. We're lucky. We have
And
a whole year.
for some
Now it's
backstory,
now it's 18. Yeah, like it's
it's 18
18
months.
months if you choose to take 18 months. So it's
Yeah,
just like, we're fortunate. However, you are self-employed. In your case,
exactly.
you don't have that opportunity. So
Mhm.
if you don't work, you don't get paid,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? So
And my
then,
husband was out of work at the time. Now
right?
he ended up going back to work. We were lucky he got a call for work a couple of weeks later, but it's
But
a
then
it's
you're
a
on your own,
ride. And then you're on your own and you're still
right?
recovering.
Exactly, right?
And you're still with this anxiety. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so I really did struggle, but I mostly struggled with not knowing what the fuck I was doing, which
Yeah.
everybody does, but
Hello.
then trying to please everybody and be the type of mom I wanted to be. Cause I'm
Mm.
also like, I'm very chill. I'm not the type of person who gets worked up over a lot of things, but I wanted to be that kind of a mom and be relaxed and think, listen, no, it's not a big deal. But I also have this kid and I've never had her before. And I'm so over the top about keeping her safe
Yeah.
that I'm completely on both ends of the spectrum. Like I didn't know what to do. Right.
Yeah. And then it feels like you're always like just trying to fake it till you make it,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Yep.
know, like, when the only reason why I think I got diagnosed at all was because I had a full on panic attack.
Right.
And it was the first one that I ever really had. And I was like, I guess the reason why I figured you can figure that it's the anxiety portion of it came into play because you have this case of the what ifs all of the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and when it happened with me, it was just like I was walking across the bridge at the park and going over a river. And here I am with Harper in the stroller. Ethan and Cole are kind of like running in front of me. And God, I love Cole so much, but Jesus, that kid. Like
Yeah.
he was, I mean, especially at that age, like 2 and 3,
Yeah.
like he just ran forever.
Mhm.
Always ran. I legitimately thought about clotheslining him from the hallway multiple times in his life. Like I just to get him to stop, right?
Yeah.
I didn't, for the record. But like he
Still
just
thinks about it today.
right? But he was just steady go all the time, and he was so much more like crazy than Ethan ever was. Ethan was so calm, but like
Yeah.
the two of them were on the bridge. They were just ahead of me. I had the stroller, and all of a sudden I had this moment of, what if this bridge goes out?
Yeah.
And it's going over this huge flowing river, right? And I'm just like, what if this bridge goes out? When was the last time that it was checked? Do they think that they actually have structural engineers? And then all of a sudden, my hands started sweating. I couldn't breathe anymore. I couldn't even see properly. Like, and the boys, I was just like, they were running ahead of me, but they weren't too far ahead. And I was just like, you need to get to the edge of the bridge. You need to go to the other side of the bridge. And I was like freaking out at them,
Yeah.
trying to get them so that we could move faster to get across to the bridge, right? And I just needed to be on the other side. And you know that when I left the park, I made sure that I did not go the same way because I couldn't
Yeah.
handle
Yeah.
it, right? And I mean, it just that's where I was. Like I
Yeah.
was just major case of the what ifs and this constant sense of impending doom. Like
I
all
had the same thing, the most
yeah,
ridiculous. I remember we had the famous renovations,
yeah,
and our couch was where the new staircase would be. So it was an L-shaped staircase in my living room. So the couch was up against it. And I remember being like lying down with Scarlett. She was going to sleep on my chest and thinking, now the railing for the stairs was like way, way above it, my head lying down with the baby.
yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh my God, what would ever happen if I stood up in such a way and then tripped that my arms went up in the air and then the baby fell over and then fell down all like
Yes.
full flight of stairs and hit the bottom and died.
And this is the thing.
Those are the kinds of thoughts that pop in your head. Like when people say intrusive thoughts, my thought is postpartum depression, intrusive thoughts is killing a baby. Like that's
Yes.
what you hear about these evil
But
intrusive thoughts.
that's like
My
going into the
intrusive thoughts,
psychosis side.
yes, exactly. But my intrusive thoughts were like, oh my God, like you, what if this bridge goes out while I'm on it? And now I've
Yes.
got my 3 kids and I got to try to save them all. Like that was the type of panic that I was feeling all the time. The same thing.
And the sad part is that I still,
I do
to
too.
this day,
Yeah.
have this panic about going over bridges. I cannot
Oh,
do it. I can't do it. I
really?
have a full breakdown every single fucking time.
Okay,
Every
well,
time.
we got to get you in therapy for that. That's
Well, I
something that
mean,
needs to be dealt with.
let's be honest here. I'm like almost 10 years postpartum. Like,
Yeah, we,
you
we,
know what I mean?
we're going to do a little therapy. Maybe we'll have an episode on what we can do to get you to go over a bridge. And then we'll have like a live from
I
a
just don't
park
want to. I'm
where
just
you
not
go
going
over
to
a
do it.
bridge.
I
Yeah,
would walk through a river.
this is happening. I'm making this my mission. I'm curing you. I want to
No,
cure you.
not doing it. Like, not, I'm
Oh,
talking as recent as, not, was it last
your
winter?
gross morn trip.
Did I do it then? Yes, probably.
Right?
There's a good chance. But like we went one winter, I don't think it was last winter. I think it was the one before that. We were on the side by side, and Jason was just like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna go over this bridge," and I'm just like, "That thing
Nope.
looks rusty."
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like, "No, it'll be fine. We can totally fit." And I was like, I got to the other side of it, and I was like, "I will fucking walk home.
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
not
know
doing
where
that
I
again.
am, but I will walk home."
Yeah.
Right?
And avoid bridges through the river.
I was like, "I'll find my way. I don't care."
See, my thing that stuck around for me when Scarlett was an infant, so she was in the bassinet next to us for months, and I would always like she'd be sleeping, and I would always like wet my finger and put it under her nose to make sure I could feel her breath. I had
Right?
to see her chest moving, and I had to
Mhm.
like feel it. Like I had to know she was breathing. I still do it now. Like I check on her
Yes.
weekly, nightly, whatever. Like whenever she goes to bed, I'll just be randomly like, I'm gonna go check on the baby. And then I
Yep.
like creep into her room and I'll check. And if I don't visibly see her moving or hear her, I'll still wet my finger and put it under her nose. And I feel like I'm gonna do it when she's like 30.
I
Like,
used to poke the kids.
Yeah, I've done that too,
because
just to
you and
make
I had
sure.
the similar experience that, and I'm sure there's tons more people just besides us that do it.
Oh yeah.
But
Well, that's why
but
I
like
wanted to talk about it.
yeah, but like our kids kind of choked on their own spit up at some
Mm-hmm.
point during the middle of the night, and then scared the shit out of us,
Yeah.
right?
First
So
hospital
now,
trip at like 10 days old.
well, like Jason, I remember Jason being home, and it was like the first weekend or so that Cole was home with us, and it happened to Cole. And he came home because
Preemies.
I guess he was out with, yeah, right. And he was out with the guys or whatever. And he came home, and I was like in our bed, in the middle of the bed, with pillows next to me on either side, trying to keep me up, with Cole on my chest asleep because I
Yeah.
would not put him back to the bed.
Yeah. I'm just too like
He
afraid.
was just like, "Why didn't you call me?" And I'm just like, "I don't know what's going on." I'm
Because
just
you just
a mess.
don't. Yeah. You're
Yeah.
scared, right? But
Yeah.
yeah.
But I
So
mean, like the other side of it is, I was looking up these different things about postpartum and stuff like that. I mean, the baby blues, everybody gets. Like,
yeah. Like right after the immediate hormone
yes,
change. Yeah.
it's got to happen, right? I mean, like everybody gets that, but there's more to the depression side of things. Like, I don't. I definitely had the anxiety and everything, but I also didn't. I just didn't enjoy anything.
Mm-hmm.
That was where my issue kind of came.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't enjoy anything.
For me, I didn't start feeling like myself again until I stopped breastfeeding and my milk dried up.
Yeah, because
And then I
then
started to feel a bit like myself. And then once the weight started coming off, and it wasn't about weight, like I think I'm still 10 pounds heavier or something than what I was. And, I'm working on my fitness and whatever, but
yeah,
I'm happy and comfortable. Right.
yeah,
But like my whole pregnancy was a struggle. And
mhm,
then, healing after, and then you're still overweight. It wasn't that I didn't like the look of myself. It was that
right.
physically I just felt off because I was uncomfortable because I
Yeah,
was carrying around all this extra weight postpartum, you
yeah,
know? So that
definitely.
was one of the things for me that like once I stopped breastfeeding and my milk dried up, that was like one layer
Mhm.
and I started to feel like myself. And then when the weight started coming off, my clothes started fitting again, like my pre-baby clothes or whatever. Um, then I started really kind of feeling like myself. Like it was like a weight came off my shoulders.
Well, and then besides that, I think like with the breastfeeding too, like if you're already experiencing like postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression, it's harder to get out of it while you're breastfeeding because you can't see yourself as a separate person,
No,
right?
you're still
So
watching everything you're eating, everything you're doing.
like you
You're
just
putting
gave up
fucking
your
cream on your
entire
nipples
body.
like a
Yeah.
million times a day. You're leaking.
Yeah. And like you gave up your body for 9 months to grow this child or
And your
eight
body's still
months,
not
whatever.
yours.
And then your body's still not yours. It's still really just a source of sustenance for
Yeah.
somebody else.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
Or your
like whenever,
parasite, your little
yeah,
parasite that you caught and then
right.
delivered.
So, but I mean, they say, I guess, like I was looking up the statistics and stuff, they say that it's like 1 in 7, but
Wow.
I think that that's actually probably skewed in the sense that not enough people talk about it.
Oh
I
my
think
God,
that it's
nobody
higher.
talks about it. People don't talk about it until like me and you right now. Like I
Mhm.
didn't realize that you had postpartum after Harper,
Yeah.
right? So like these are things that like, we talk about generally. Me and you were very open. Like
Oh
we
yeah.
talk about everything. But
Yep.
like a lot of people don't talk about it and it's almost shameful to talk about it. Like
Yeah.
you feel embarrassed. You don't want people to know because you want to be the perfect mom and whatever. And then the checkups aren't there for you.
No.
Like when you're going to your doctor, even when I mentioned it to my doctor how I was feeling,
Yeah.
I remember she was like, okay, well, let's see how you're feeling on the next checkup.
Right. Because they
And
don't trust you to be able to figure out how you feel, which is
but
ridiculous.
she never asked again. It was like,
No,
if you're still feeling the same way, let me know, kind of thing.
pretty
Like,
much.
it wasn't written down. There
Which
was nothing talked about.
I don't think that it's fair for, say, even the doctors to put that
Mhm.
on a new mom. I think that that's something that should be checked on a regular basis afterwards for at least a good year.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because, once you start fitting into your role as a mom, you don't want to say that you're not fitting into it. You don't
Exactly.
want to go to the doctor and be like, yeah, no, I got to be honest with you. I'm still not feeling great. I'm not doing a good job of this. Like, what's wrong with me? Because it
Yeah.
makes you feel like a shitty parent.
And like I remember my public health nurse was asking some questions. Like I
Yeah.
remember she was like, how are you feeling, whatever,
Hmm.
and how are you adjusting? But I didn't really know what to say to the public health nurse
Exactly.
because I had just met her.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like she wasn't my regular doctor, whatever. No, she was sweet as anything, and I've grown to love her.
Yeah.
But when they come in to check on you, all you're told is that a public health nurse is going to check on you in your home with your baby, and you're just like, is this like when you is this like when you get a dog from the pound and they have to do a home visit first to make sure it's a
Right.
fit place to live, which it is. And my house is a fit place to live. But when you have all that anxiety after, you don't want to say that you feel weird because they're coming
No.
into your house to check on you. And you're like, oh, I'm feeling great. No, not sad, not this, not that, because you don't know what to expect. Right. So, in her defense, she did ask some questions, but maybe there could be more specific questions. And like you say, more consistently, like stick
Yeah.
with it on regular, like the checkups that your kid goes to for the needles.
Yeah.
There should be a sheet
Check
of
in with
questions for the
mom
mom.
too. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I mean, like, the thing is that, they say that, like, I was looking at the statistics again. So they say 10 to 15% of mothers in the first year. So it doesn't always happen right after.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It could be years. Like, how many times do you have to hear in news stories about things that happen with children that, parents do away with their kids,
Oh,
but
yeah.
their youngest was like 3 and 4 years old, but then they chalk it up to postpartum psychosis, for instance. But
Yeah.
how did it get to psychosis?
Exactly. Yeah. Like
You know
it
what I mean?
wasn't checked on. Yeah.
No,
These are things that
exactly.
need to happen.
Yeah. And I mean, on a mental health note, like, people generally don't feel okay saying that they don't feel okay.
Yeah.
You know
It's
what
the
I mean?
stigma around it, right?
Yeah, because there's always that somebody out there that's just like, well, what's wrong with you? You have all of these things.
Why
You
can't you
know,
just be happy?
why can't you just be happy? Well, if
Well,
I
it's a
could just
chemical
be happy, I would be.
imbalance.
You know what
Exactly.
I mean?
Yeah. If I could
And I
wake
mean,
up happy, I'd be doing it.
it'd be like this.
Hmm.
But, and I mean, like, I personally went on, I had to go on medication because
Hmm.
I was too far down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Like, I
But
was
but
not
good.
feeling.
Did it
Yeah.
work?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I was on it for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then eventually I just came off of it, and because it it went backwards. I almost feel like sometimes, when you're on it, it can be great as like a reset button.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
like, it's kind of like it resets that imbalance that happened in there, and then you can kind of, work your way back into your normal kind of thing,
Right.
right? I don't think it's something that, if you don't feel like you need to be on it long term, you shouldn't be on it long term. If you want to find other ways, like right now, like I said to you before, I deal with a lot of it through exercise and trying to eat better and finding certain foods that, try to help that out, certain supplements that try to help it out and whatnot. But, like, right now, I'm not on any medication. Now, COVID is really throwing me for a loop.
So I've had a rough
But
week.
yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But on a normal, regular, say, day,
Hmm.
I don't feel out of control
Good.
unless I'm PMSing.
Right. Well,
But now,
we're
at
all
this
there.
point, but realistically now, I think what I figured out is that, like, I can definitely time when I'm going to have a panic attack around the same time as, like, the week before I start my period. So, like,
Interesting.
there's plenty of, actual research out there that shows that, like, women are more susceptible to depression, period,
Hmm.
just because of hormonal fluctuations.
Yeah, I believe that.
And, like, I think the ratio is actually 1.7 to 1 for women to men who experience it,
Wow.
right? And that's just depression. But then
Yeah.
if you add the fact that you already have, say, depression or whatever, then you're more likely to get postpartum. And then you're 50% more likely to get postpartum on subsequent pregnancies if you've had it on one,
Right.
right?
Which makes sense.
It does. I mean, like, and this is why I say, like, I don't think that with Harper, it just happened out of the blue. I think it was just
No.
building,
Yeah,
right? I
absolutely.
definitely, and they say that, like, your birth story definitely has a whole lot more to do with it. Like, for instance, you and I, we had emergency C-sections. Those are traumatic experiences. It's a traumatic surgery, period.
Yeah. And then to
Without
have
the
it early
emergency.
and Yeah.
Right?
And then have all that set in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's why, why we wanted to talk about it, because let's get it out there. Shit's normal. It happens. Fucking talk about it. Talk to your doctor about it. Talk to your friend, your mom, your husband, your whoever
Talk to us.
about how you're feeling. Yeah, fucking write us. Write it, please. Somebody
Right?
write me.
Seriously.
I
Send
never
us
get
an
mail
email.
anymore.
Something.
Everything I get in my inbox now is just like random
Promotion.
shit, like trying to scam me. And soon I'm just going to send them stuff so I can get a
Right?
response.
Same as those
Like,
phone
talk
calls.
back. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm going to jail. I got a jail one today. Was it
Yeah.
today or yesterday?
I got 2
From
on
Service
Friday.
Canada.
Yeah, me
Service
too.
Canada. They're like, we're sending you to, I don't know, the authority, whatever. I hang up. I'm like, I can't deal with this.
Sometimes I think about pressing 1 and then answering the call and just letting them know where I work.
Well, see, the funny thing for me, I want to mess with them, but I'm afraid that, because I've read so many stories where they're like,
Right.
don't say the word yes, because they'll get your
Exactly.
voice saying the word yes, and then they'll steal your identity somehow, whatever.
Yeah.
So now whenever they ask questions, I don't even want to fuck with them. I just want to hang up right away because I'm afraid I'm going to say something wrong
Me
and they're going
too.
to take my stuff.
I know. I hear
Don't
you.
take my identity.
Yeah.
You know what we forgot to do?
Hmm.
So great chat. Really great chat. But guess
Yeah.
what we forgot to do? We forgot to say something that is good. So what is something that's good for you
Oh,
this week? What's going on?
what's good for me this week? Oh, I guess that my son came out of isolation and I no longer actually have to be his formal butler. Now I'm just like a semi butler.
You're back to momming.
I'm just back to momming. Yeah.
Regular momming. Yeah, so
Right.
maybe we did talk a little bit about what's good. We just didn't say the words, tell me what's good.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. And
Yeah.
what's good with you?
I had a down week. So like what we're talking about now, like, COVID and everything, like it got to me mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And I stopped, like I didn't exercise. I think last week we talked about how like, oh, I'm in this great routine. I'm going to be exercising, blah, blah, blah. And then fucking, I did nothing. Like, so
And
I was
this
eating.
week took a dive.
I was just like, like I wasn't sleeping. I was waking up about every hour. Now it's
Yeah.
not uncommon for me to wake up at night. Like I'm up 2 or 3 times at least to pee, not
Yeah.
even with the baby, like just
Right.
myself. But yeah, last week there was like 2 or 3 nights in a row where I was up literally I'd sleep for 2 hours
Mm-hmm.
and then I was up every hour until my alarm.
Ugh,
So
it's the
I
worst.
just didn't get up earlier than I needed to. Like
Mhm.
normally I'd get up at 4 or 5 and work out so that I'd be up and showered before the baby. But I was like, I'm not fucking going anywhere.
Yeah.
And I slept in. So that was rough.
Yeah.
But then what day was it that we were talking? And I had like that, was it Friday?
Yeah, it was
So
Friday.
I had like this moment of clarity. And I can't even describe it to you. It's just one of these weird things. I got like some kind of targeted ad on my Facebook that was like, watch this thing about, generating leads in real estate. Like it was,
Mm.
something, whatever. And I clicked on it. I was like, yeah, okay, tell me. So I watched it for like 35 minutes of them trying to sell me whatever. And it was like something clicked. It was like all of this information that I've already known, but now it was laid in front of me. And for whatever reason, the dots got connected. So I had like this moment of clarity for my job, but then that sprinkled into this motivation.
Yeah.
And I got right back on track. It was so weird. Like,
So
so
good.
anyway, yeah. So I started, like, I went back to my exercising. Now I still didn't feel like going flat out.
Mhm.
So the weekend I was just walking on my treadmill, watching Netflix, which is one of my favorite things to do anyway.
Still
And
moving.
yeah, like I'm up, I'm moving, I'm getting on the go. And then this morning I didn't do that. I took my dogs out for a walk, they loved it. I loved it. It was fresh air. It was nice. I felt great. And then lunchtime, I started a new program. So
Oh.
I was in my space that I'm in right now, my home office / podcast room / workout space / everything.
Multi-purpose room.
And yeah, and I did, it's like a 30-minute circuit training.
Okay.
It's a 30-day program and it's weights and cardio. There's like Tabata and stuff like that. So anyway, it was fucking, I tell you, you don't really know, how out of shape you are until you're trying to get back in shape.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a wake up call and I was like, fuck. But at the same time, it was something good. It was a good
It was
workout.
like, you clearly need to do this.
Yeah. And speaking of which, even though people might be listening to this at like 9 a.m., it's almost 10 p.m. here. So
We need a good
I
night's sleep.
say, yeah, we wrap it up because I'm supposed to be getting up at 5 to do
Yeah.
said workout.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, all right, that's great. So we're going to sign off, and hopefully everybody is still listening, or a few stragglers are still left behind. Guys, if you do have any questions that you want us to talk about on the air, or you just even want us to reply to you, send along your questions. You can find us on Instagram at the Why the Fuck Not Podcast, or you can email us at the Why the F Not Podcast at gmail.com. And
Yeah.
That's it. Until then, we'll see you next week.
That's a wrap.
All right. That's a wrap it up. Bye.